Welcome to the latest episode of the Chant. In today's episode, I'm talking to my buddy Derek Fields. He owns a CrossFit gym down in Tampa, Florida that he purchased just last year. I thought it'd be great because he's just kind of in the throes of small business ownership, and I really wanted to get his perspective on things. I think given how the world is going these days, it's vital and important for conservative Christians to understand that entrepreneurship and small business ownership is an option, and it's an option that's great because you're in charge and you're not beholden to an HR guy or HR person, right? It's your company. You can do with it what you want, more or less. So I thought getting his perspective would be helpful. We talk about his background in CrossFit, what CrossFit is, why he likes CrossFit, and then we break down what it was like to buy a business, and then conclude with what it's like to run a business and all the lessons he's learned, all the different things he's felt. It's actually really interesting. I think it's a really good talk, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. As always, please remember to like and subscribe or leave a comment. All that stuff helps me understand if you like something or if you don't like something. Plus, it helps us spread the word about what we're doing here. So I'll shut up and I'll let the conversation start. Thanks again and enjoy.
That I have not pursued a job in a cubicle or something that you'd expect someone with an economics degree to maybe pursue right out of college, is I knew that given my inability to keep my mouth shut a lot of times, and just being passionate about ideas, that I wasn't going to survive or be very happy in like a traditional workplace.
Yeah, I think that's something like every semi-conservative person worries about. In fact, I know there's a study about it. Like, I've read the study, and I know that was something like when I worked for General Motors or when I worked for my previous marketing agency. It was like, yep, I'm gonna just be quiet on this one. I can't say anything. And then it was always like, if one of your like coworkers became friends with you on Facebook or like found you on Twitter, it was like, oh, geez, now what? Yeah. So was that always your plan though, coming out of college, or is that because like that seems to me like last 4 years that's been the development, right?
Well, I didn't really have a plan for a while in college. When I went into college, I thought I wanted to get into like the business side of film and television production because I was really interested in production. And then I did a summer in Los Angeles doing that, and I was like, "Holy crap, this is a cesspool. I don't want to be here."
Wow, I don't remember you doing that at all.
Yeah, so that was after my sophomore year. I interned at a production company in LA for 3 months. So that would have been right after you graduated, I think.
Okay, yeah, I was probably dealing with all the things. Wow. So can you say which production company or?
Yeah, I was with New Regency. So they're a division of Fox. I worked on very, very little, and not even credited kind of thing. But a lot of the work that I did was while they were making 12 Years a Slave and The Internship, which was like a off comedy with Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson.
Very well.
Yeah.
But 12 Years a Slave won a lot of awards and stuff.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And you see cesspool and you're just like, I'm out.
Yeah, I had, don't want to get too far ahead, but I had already heard about CrossFit at that point.
Right.
And that was basically all I did that summer aside from work. That was right after I got into it. Los Angeles, obviously a huge city, had a lot of CrossFit gyms when many other places did not have CrossFit gyms at that point.
Right.
And I was at the CrossFit gym there probably twice a day, every day pretty much. But that was like all I did there because I didn't want to participate in anything else that was
debauchery.
Going on.
Yeah. I think that's because I remember you getting into CrossFit when we were in college, and it was like, oh yeah, that's the thing he does. He goes to that one gym, the expensive gym, or I mean, you were already into fitness beforehand. I remember that, like you were always in good shape, but then you discovered it. You were you were like that prototypical CrossFitter at first, I'd argue.
Yeah, which everybody goes through that stage.
Right. I mean, anytime you do any sort of cool new thing, you're like, guys, you do spread it. Like it's
right. I have to keep my mouth shut a little bit with those people now that I've been doing it almost a decade. Like the new people can get on my nerves a little bit. It's like,
really?
Yeah, which it's normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like like pledges in a fraternity. Like they're way too into
Mhm.
it. It's like, guys,
Yeah.
like just wait. You don't even know all the stupid meetings and all the like the fact that half the guys hate each other for something inconsequential. Like, yeah,
Uh-huh. But it
okay.
turns out that actually prepares you pretty well for the workplace. So.
It really does. As stupid as it is, it does prepare you because most workplaces are stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, you took that. Can you
Mhm.
call it a hobby, an interest, and then now you've like you worked for CrossFit National,
Mhm.
CrossFit
Yeah. So
the
CrossFit Inc.
corporation,
Yeah.
CrossFit Inc, and now you own a CrossFit box. I'm using the
Right.
terminology. Nailed it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up working for CrossFit headquarters, CrossFit Inc., whatever you want to call it, a little over 5 years. And that was Chris Andreessen, actually, one of our mutual friends, told me that the founder and CEO of CrossFit was giving a talk at his think tank that he was working at in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Drove out, took it a resume and cover letter, begged for an internship, weaseled my way in, and so that was after my or during my junior year, and then the internship was the summer after my junior year. So I never really like had any other plan coming out of college.
Yeah.
They asked me to drop out of college and come work for them full time, and I said no, and just worked part time and
Yeah.
finished school my senior year.
Okay.
But yeah, that lasted 5 years, and yeah, now just as of October, I own CrossFit Rebels in Clearwater, Florida, which is in the Tampa Bay area, where the biggest gym, I think, by membership and by square footage of our type in the Tampa Bay area. We got a little over 300 members between the age of 5 and 91 and a half. So
Nice. Got the
pretty
whole
big spread.
range. You gotta get some babies in there, man. I'm tired of these,
Yeah.
skinny fat babies. You gotta jack them, get them jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool. I want to know about working for CrossFit Inc. because
Hmm.
it seemed like talking to you while you were there, you were very you're like special projects, right? Like
Hmm.
you were often like running around doing different things. So like
Right.
what kind of stuff did you do there, and did any of it kind of help prepare you for owning a CrossFit gym?
Yeah, it absolutely did. So the special projects, running around doing different things, that was basically because my role didn't really exist. It was kind of like I begged for that internship and ended up working under a guy who had known Coach Glassman since he was 14 years old, and he was like working out in the original CrossFit gym.
Hmm.
So his name was Russ Green, and his role was created just for Russ too, right? Because he was like a super close, almost like a son. Um, and so that evolved over the years into kind of like whatever we needed to do, or whatever Coach Glassman, the founder and CEO, was like particularly interested in that time. So when I first got there, I was doing more um, like media monitoring and
Okay,
going back and forth with media a little bit on inaccuracies in stories or this or that kind of thing.
sure.
Monitoring, looking for a lot of intellectual property theft, and then just kind of like sending that to the legal team.
Sure.
Because I'm
I
not a
mean,
lawyer.
you were there during that like the CrossFit like explosion, right? Like I feel like CrossFit
Right.
like what 2010 to
So
like 2015 CrossFit blew up, right?
Yep. So in 2009, there were about 1,000 CrossFit affiliate gyms worldwide, and that number was at 10,000 by the end of 2013.
Okay, yeah.
So
That's huge. That's 10
big,
time explosion, yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wouldn't have like yeah,
So
what else did you do? So you did media monitoring, all that. Like obviously it's gonna be huge during the explosion because like everybody is gonna want to like
mhm.
capitalize on the trend, right? I think everybody did
Right,
cross training and then it became a whole thing.
and it was one of those things where a lot of people didn't understand that CrossFit was like a trademark brand name
Oh,
and
that's
just
true
thought
too.
it was a style of training. But it was a trademark brand name that they owned, and so people using it, kind of like you're talking about, to make money without affiliating with us and having the proper insurance and this and that, or marketing their products to grips for CrossFit XYZ. Like none of those things are kosher as far as
That's interesting.
intellectual property law is concerned. So I was doing a lot of that. And then I ran the at CrossFit Twitter account for a while during that stint too. And then my role kind of started to evolve because shortly after I got there, there was a study done at the Ohio State University on CrossFit at a local gym near there.
Hmm.
And basically, the study was really complimentary on its surface, but it was over a 6 week period, I believe, and 9 out of the 54 participants were marked as having been injured during the study to the point that they couldn't complete it. And
Okay.
so the kind of like
I'm
the
glad
one
you bring
thing,
this up because this is one like the big rubs against CrossFit that I think is like
yes, this
legitimate.
is where
Like
it
people will
all
complain
started.
about like the evangelization and all that kind of stuff. Like I don't care. Like people like things. That's fine. But the
Uh-huh.
fact that people could get injured, I think, is a legitimate gripe you could have against CrossFit. So
Right, which is true of anything,
that's also
but a
fair.
lot of that perception is coming from what I'm kind of diving into here. So, 9
Yeah.
out of 54 participants were marked as like injured to the point of not completing the study. And we called the guy who owned the CrossFit gym it was done at,
Hmm.
and he was like, that's just not true. So we dove into it a little bit more, and I actually don't know where this is because I haven't worked for him for 2.5 years or more now. But as of August of 2018, when I left, we were still very much in the thick of this lawsuit against the National Strength and Conditioning Association,
Okay.
which the study was published in their journal, and they kind of had they were the organizers really. Um, which interestingly enough, they're a direct competitor of CrossFit's, even though they're a nonprofit, because
Oh, you guys do research, right?
revenue is we're both in the business of trainer education and credentialing.
Gotcha.
So direct competitors that lost tremendous market share when that CrossFit explosion you're talking about happened. They published the study. It says a lot of people got injured. I think that's 16% was the injury
Sure.
rate over the course of 6 weeks, which is a fairly short
Yeah.
time period. And so we dove into it more. It took years, tons of millions of dollars in legal fees and court and all that. But the short story is that it was a double-blind study, and so all 54 of these people showed up at the start of the study to get their body fat tested, to get XYZ tested.
Right.
Then they were supposed to go do CrossFit for 6 weeks at this gym,
Right.
and then they were supposed to show up for follow-up testing at the end of the 6 weeks at the like the lab or whatever, where they measured body fat and all those sorts of things that they tested during the course of the study.
Right.
And 9 people didn't show up out
Okay.
of the 54. But
Sure.
because it was a double blind study, the people conducting the tests had no information on who the individuals were or a way to contact them. And they just didn't bother to contact them or find out why they didn't show up to the follow up testing.
Right.
So 9 out of the 54 don't show up, and they just assume and mark down that they were injured doing
Oh.
CrossFit during this 6 week period, and that's why they didn't show up. Turns out through depositions and all sorts of sworn documents in court and stuff that out of the 9, only 2 were injured, neither of which were injured doing CrossFit. One was injured falling off of a ladder, and the other was injured at a LA Fitness type Globo gym doing something else. And then the remaining 7 just didn't show up for various reasons. One moved from Ohio to Florida during the course of the study.
Fair.
Um, and then a variety of other things. A couple people were like, "Oh, I signed up because I was curious to get my body fat tested, but I didn't actually care about the study, so I didn't show
Yeah.
up." So anyway, that's where it kind of all started. That study was published, and it took several years to get it retracted and corrected. But
Yeah.
by that point, I mean, with everything else, once the
Yeah.
media has
The
moved on and
retraction doesn't
moved
get
on.
nearly the attention as the initial story.
Right. Like
Yeah.
shortly after the initial story, Outside Magazine published, they had a cover story that said, "Is CrossFit killing us, or is CrossFit destroying the world?" or like something very dramatic like that.
Right.
And yeah, that's kind of where it all started. That was published around, and a lot of studies have been done since then and show that the incidence rate or injury rate defined with a time parameter, because you got to have a time parameter there, right? If you
Mhm.
get injured once every 3 hours you're training, that's a lot of injuries. If you
Right.
get injured once every 10,000 hours you're training, that's nothing.
Right.
So all the studies that have been done since then show that the injury rate is between like 2.7 and 3.4 injuries per 1,000 hours of training, which is
Okay.
comparable to general fitness training and lower than all these different sports. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, everything has inherent risk to it, and it's
Right.
way riskier to sit on your couch and do nothing and eat extreme amounts of highly refined carbohydrates to excess than it is to go learn how to squat.
Sure. That makes sense. And plus, like, you got to think like probabilities. Like, even like going for a walk doesn't have a 0% like injury rate. You could twist your ankle on a crack in the cement. Like, the things are going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah, we decide that some things are worth the risk. Driving a
Right.
car, all kinds of things every single day when we get out of bed.
Right. And it makes sense that physical activity would have probably slightly higher. Like I think of like bench press. I'm not good at it partly because it freaks me out that I'll have like 200 pounds above my head. I don't like that.
Mhm.
It makes me nervous
Yep.
because there's a higher risk of injury. It's just a more precarious situation. But like, what are you gonna do?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. What part? Why do you like CrossFit so much? Why do you like it in terms like relative to other fitness things? Like there are alternatives. There's
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lots of them.
yeah. Why,
And
why
lots of
CrossFit,
good
not
ones.
Zumba or the
Some
Orange Theory or
because I'm not a good dancer.
yeah,
Um,
tight
Although
hips?
you've seen me dance quite a bit. I'm
I've
pretty
seen you dance. Yeah, you're a good dancer. You give yourself some slack. You'd be a great Zumba instructor.
good. Maybe I'll switch careers.
I think you should offer Zumba at your CrossFit
That would
box.
probably go over very, very
I think that'd be
well.
hilarious.
um,
Deadlifting
so
and Zumba. That'd be great.
the short story there is basically that I grew up boxing,
Hmm.
playing lacrosse, and playing golf. And when I got to Hillsdale, none of those things existed there. So I
Sure.
kind of needed like some sort of physical outlet. I got really into just fitness and working out and taught some classes on campus and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting around New Year's Day, 2012, watching TV, and they were rerunning the 2011 CrossFit Games on ESPN that day.
Sure.
And like you said, like I was in pretty good shape at the time, and thought I was in good shape and was teaching classes, and like um, we even had a guy from the Green Bay Packers practice squad that would come to some of my classes. And so I like thought I was like hot stuff, and then I
Yeah.
was like, well, shoot, I don't think I can do any of what these people are doing. And so that kind of intrigued me. I also have always kind of like done fairly well in school without a lot of effort, and
Yeah.
so doing something that was physically challenging, or at least challenging in some sort of way, put in X amount of work and get Y out of it was always appealing to me. But specifically CrossFit, all that to say, I think it's probably the best approach for the average person who has a limited amount of time. You're not going to be in the gym, you know, 30 hours a week, 20 hours a week, whatever. And if you're not going to be a professional athlete or pursuing specialization in some kind of sport, I
Hmm.
think going to a CrossFit class for an hour is the best recipe for a fitness that is broad, general, and inclusive. That's going to prepare you for kind of the widest variety of stuff you want to do in life. If you want to run a 5 minute mile, that's great. I can introduce you to some people that can help you with that. If you want to back squat, 650 pounds, I can introduce you to some people that can help you with that. But for the average person who's just trying to, enjoy life and, play sports with their friends every once in a while, be around to coach the kids' t-ball team or
Hmm.
whatever it may be, I think CrossFit has really kind of figured out a really great approach.
Okay. Can you just because we might have people who don't know CrossFit super well, can you kind
Mm-hmm.
of go into like the methodology of like why that's the case?
Right. So I just gave like an hour long lecture on this last week, so I'll try to
Yeah,
figure out
you
how
go
to
two
distill
hours.
that
It's
down
fine. I got
to
yeah.
a minute.
Yeah.
So essentially, there's this article that Coach Glassman, founder and CEO, again, wrote in 2002 called "What Is Fitness?" And
Sure.
he said, "Okay, guys, his dad was literally a rocket scientist. He grew up in a very like STEM focused household."
Uh-huh.
And he basically said, okay, guys, there's all these different fields of science and they operate on precise definitions. And there's no definition out there of fitness that any serious scientist from another field would just laugh out the door.
Right.
The dictionary says it's the state of being fit. Other organizations like the NSCA and that I mentioned earlier, or the American College of Sports Medicine, had a 200-word definition that talked about energy and
Sure.
vitality and just all these abstract concepts. And
Right.
he said, that we're missing something here. And then on top of that, Outside Magazine, which I mentioned earlier, had a cover story with a guy named, oh, I forget his first name now. Mark Allen, I think was his name, but he won the Ironman triathlon 6 times.
Oh wow.
Incredible athlete. Absolutely world class in his sport and stuff. And the cover story said fittest man on earth.
Yeah.
And Coach Glassman was like, well, there's also Olympic decathletes, who have tremendous stamina and endurance, like this triathlete. But in any test of actual speed, power, strength, agility, blah blah blah, these decathletes are going to blow them out of the water. So that doesn't really seem quite right to me. And so he started kind of playing around with these models in his head, and he came up with three of them. The first one is the idea that even though we didn't have a definition of fitness, there's these 10 general physical skills uh, that exercise physiologists agreed upon. And he
Mm-hmm.
said that fitness should probably pursue maximization of all of these different skills. So if you kind of like I mentioned earlier with the 5 minute mile, if we specialize in one or two of them, we can get really good at those one or two, but
Right.
then the rest of them tend to suffer.
Sure.
So a fitness that is broad, general, inclusive, which again, most regular people, it also serves you really well in combat or
Right.
soldiers, police officers, things like that, or just
Right.
whenever you don't know what life and nature is going to throw at you.
Right.
We want a fitness that is broad, general, and inclusive. So we should pursue all these 10 general physical skills. Second idea he came up with was the idea of a hopper, like you'd use in a raffle, like the big barrel with a wheel on it that turns.
Yeah.
So throw every possible physical task you could think of into that hopper, and the fitness should be the person who's fittest is someone who should perform well at as many tasks as you can pull out of that hopper. So they might not like win any of the events, but let's say they finish in like the top 20% of all of them.
Right.
Whereas someone who has the heaviest deadlift is probably not going to do super, super well in a run.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And then the third one is that there's kind of distill the science down super, super basic. There's these three metabolic pathways. Think of it like three different engines in your body.
Mm-hmm.
One's good for peak power output, but only lasts for like 10 seconds. Think like running an all out dead
Right.
sprint. One lasts for about 2 minutes and doesn't have peak power output, but still produces a lot of power. And that's like, if you've ever run like a 400-meter run to 800-meter run, like a couple minutes of exertion before you get
Sure.
really, really
Like a
tired, because
quarter
you're working
mile sprint
at a
almost.
close to, yeah. Just when it's not that 10-second dead sprint, but when you do something for like 1 or 2 minutes at a high pace and then you get really tired.
Right.
And then the third pathway is the one that everybody's heard of, the oxidative or aerobic pathway.
Right.
And that's when the body uses oxygen to make ATP. And it can basically go forever when you're trained.
Yeah.
But it's not like maximally efficient at this peak power output.
Right.
So he said
That's,
a lot of
that's
times,
the jog. That's the I'm gonna jog for
yep,
an hour or whatever, and you're just
or
grinding on it.
yeah, even going for a walk or like
Sure.
right now we're both sitting here and all three of our metabolic pathways, our engines are running, right? But
Sure.
really those first two are just kind of idling, and it's our oxidative pathway that's fueling us right now
Sure.
because we're not like terribly exerting ourselves.
Yeah, no, I'm not. So here's maybe this is an in the weeds question, but I'm curious. How does
Uh-huh.
that middle one, like, how does your body switch between them? Because I would think you'd want to like start with the short one, and then it's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
we're going here longer. Like, how does it know which one to go with?
It's kind of it is three distinct energy pathways, but like I said, they're all working simultaneously. Like if we're using the engine metaphor, they're all idling and maybe one will rev up a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, if you're doing something that is close to or at your absolute maximal ability,
Mm-hmm.
so that 10-second sprint, that 1 to 3 rep max deadlift, the super heavy squat, anything like that, that phosphogeneic or phosphocreatine pathway, that first 10-second one is the one that's going to engage, just because that is the only way your body can create that kind of energy output, right?
Okay.
That second one, the glycolytic pathway, that is, I'm sure you've heard of glycogen. Maybe
Yeah.
not all of our viewers have, but that's like the sugar that's stored in your muscles, right? So
Right.
that's there, but once it's exhausted, it's kind of gone. Whereas
Sure.
oxygen is there forever.
Okay. So, oh, now I'm going to get more in the weeds. How does
So we want
ketosis
to
affect?
maximize all three of those.
Right. How does
Is the idea.
ketosis work into that? Because that destroys your glycogen stores.
Right. So that's basically your body is going to. So ketosis, for anybody who doesn't
Yeah.
know,
Thank you for defining it.
is
Yeah.
essentially your body has this mechanism where it can produce these energy through something called ketones, and that comes from fat. So there's protein, carbohydrates, and fat, right? Those are the three what we call macronutrients. And most of the time, that glycogen are sort of like everyday fuel. Primarily, this is an oversimplification,
Hmm.
but comes from carbohydrates, glycogen, carbohydrate, whereas ketones, fat. So if you don't get any carbohydrates at all, your body has this mechanism to produce energy from fat instead. Because, if you kill an animal in a hunter gatherer party, thousands and thousands of years ago, and that's all you eat, you might only get protein and fat from that animal. There's not really carbohydrates there. So your body needed a way to create energy without it,
Hmm.
without carbohydrates, that is.
Right.
So anyway, the ketones are just essentially your body's going to break those down to create ATP instead of glycogen in that
Oh,
case.
okay. So it just subs them out then?
It's always ATP. There's different ways of using it, but ATP is the medium of energy exchange in all organic life that we know right now, at
Okay.
least.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. So the whole idea between CrossFit is like, let's not be the best at this one area, but let's be top, you said top 20% in everything. And that way you are well-roundedly fit, which is good for the average person. And it's very like, I think, doesn't Taleb talk about this in like Anti-Fragile? Like it makes you like stronger and like more easier to adapt and all that jazz.
Right, exactly. If you play a sport or you're a professional athlete, or even you're just interested in something and you want to specialize, that's great. But generally speaking, nature punishes the specialist and
Right.
rewards the generalist. So we want to be the jack of all trades, master of none.
Right. Because
And that 20% number is just a random number
no,
pulled
but
out.
it
Yeah,
makes
but you get
sense.
the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you'd never finish first place, but on average, you'd probably come out really well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. So how going in further, like what does that programming look like? Because like it's not like a push pull leg system, is it? Or is it
Right.
is it
No,
like
it's
that? I don't
not.
know.
And if we think about it, life and sport tend
Hmm.
to not be like that.
Sure.
Coach Glassman, I don't want to butcher the quote, but he would say something like, show me this regimented program where on Monday I do legs and on Tuesday I do chest and blah blah blah, and then the inverse of that pattern shows where you're deficient.
Hmm.
And so getting back to life and sport and all these different things tend to not be that way. We don't tend to only use one muscle group or perform like one single task over and over. Like we tend to move in three-dimensional space, move our body, and move external loads through three-dimensional space through complex compound multi-joint movement patterns. And so it makes sense to train that way, again, unless you're specializing.
Right. How do you?
Is my phone buzzing? I want to
Nah,
turn it off if it is. Okay,
I haven't heard it. You're good.
cool.
So kind of breaking that down further, how do you do like progression? How do you measure that? If you're constantly mixing it up, how do you
Hmm.
know if your bench press is
Yeah.
getting stronger
Well, that's a great
or
point.
whatever?
So to get into that, to talk about how we would program for this, we would program constantly varied, high intensity functional movement. And so what you're getting at there is the difference between variance and randomness,
Hmm.
which are different because randomness, I mean, you could flip a coin 10 times
Hmm.
and mathematically, like you should get heads 5 times, you should get tails 5 times, right?
Right. Hmm.
But we all know that's not what's going to happen in actuality more times than not.
Right.
So with randomness, you can miss things, whereas variance is intentional and planned to make sure you sort of cover all the bases. So what the programming looks like is a combination of monostructural movements, which are running, rowing, biking, jumping rope, things like that. Gymnastics, which is moving your own body, just your body weight in different ways, and weightlifting, which would be moving external loads. Combining those in as many different ways as possible. But again, going back to that principle of intentional variance, where you're mentioning, how do you know you're getting stronger? We tend to program our strength work in periodization, kind of like you're thinking of with doing your bench press every so often and having intentional percentages that are increasing from one week to the next and things like that. So the strength work is very much still programmed in that way. Usually every gym's different, but a lot of gyms you'll have like a warm up and then you'll have a strength session or a period where you work on a technical skill movement, like let's say a ring muscle up. And then after that, you'll have some sort of conditioning piece, which will usually be sort of a combination of a few different movements. Because again, it's really rare in nature, combat, whatever, that we would just do one isolated thing over and over again,
Right.
or just perform cardio
Right.
of a
Are you
half an
saying
hour.
it's unnatural to be on an elliptical machine and watching like a trashy soap opera for like an hour and a half at a time? That's not gonna help me survive in the
I
wild.
might
Is that
be
the claim you're
so
making?
bold as to claim that, yeah.
Wow. That is a bold
Which
white girls across the country are crying right now because of you.
wouldn't be the first time.
That's a good. I like that.
My fiance will probably not like that
And
answer
maybe don't tell her about this.
if she watches this.
Yeah. All right. That's yeah. All right. That makes sense to me. It also makes it so because it is like varied and you're talking about variance, that
Uh-huh.
does mean you need high participation. Like you can't like skipping days would
Yes,
be problematic, right?
absolutely. Yes, yeah.
Like
You
you
hit the
you need to
nail on the
come
head.
in frequently. Like you can't
Right.
and like it might even be
So
difficult. Could it be possible to even do like if you're doing like a hard variance, like a very varied one, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like it would like you got to make it somewhat within people's routines. Like I have to
right.
imagine that's part of the difficulty in programming, right?
Yeah. So it depends on the gym because every gym is an affiliate rather than a franchise. So they're free to make their own choices and kind of have their own vibe, set their programming, set their pricing, XYZ. It's not like McDonald's where everything is standardized.
Okay.
Um, so every gym's a little bit different. But having said that, across the 15,000 gyms are sort of like best practices that have worn
Sure.
out and some commonalities that we see. And you're going to get the average person is going to get tremendous increases in their fitness from only doing 3 days a week. But you're right that having said that, if you really want to get the most out of it, make sure you truly get all the various stimuli that the person doing your programming is intending. You're going to want to show up as much as possible. That's one of the reasons why. So for our gym, we program Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, today, when we're recording this at least, is our open gym day. So it's usually an active recovery type day or a day to make up if your
Okay.
schedule didn't allow you and you missed a day. And then Friday is programmed as normal. And then Saturday mornings, there's an open gym period. And then we have like a little partner workout afterward that's like a good conditioning piece, but it's not part of that kind of periodized intentional strength programming or anything. It's more just to kind of get your sweat on, have some fun doing a workout as a team with a couple other people and that
Sure.
sort of thing. And then basically no CrossFit gyms are open on Sunday. So in theory, if you miss something, and you have like a garage setup or something, you could hit that. But yeah, generally speaking, you should show up at your gym as much as you're able to.
That's fair. Yeah. That something you brought up is like the partner aspect, and I think something
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit does really well, and is part of why it's so popular is that it does have that community to it. Is
Right.
that uh is that like obviously that's kind of part of the product because it's cross country.
Mm-hmm.
Every CrossFit gym has its own place, but how much of that is just like is there a playbook? Like is that given to you from like CrossFit Inc? Is it like fun fact? This is how you create a community.
Explicitly, no. They'll talk a little bit about how shared experiences, especially shared suffering, even though
Yeah,
suffering is kind of a strong word, will
sure.
just naturally create community.
Right.
And so, in any kind of gym, you work really hard, but the fact that we're all doing the same workout, it's scaled to everyone's unique ability level. We
Hmm.
can change the load, we can change the range of motion, we can change the movement itself, but try to keep the stimulus similar. So, like, if I work out at my gym with one of our 86-year-olds who graduated from the Legends program for seniors and is, bad enough to be able to work out in the class with the rest of the young people,
By
we're
bad,
probably going to be,
you mean badass
yeah,
enough. Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Like,
I
okay.
wasn't sure if I like what we're allowed to say, not
Yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah. No,
but
not awful, but like they're awesome bad.
he,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Just to be
He,
clear.
he, I'm thinking of a specific person, and he is a badass. He's like, I would say he's the coolest person in the gym because I'd rather be him when I'm 86 than be able to, clean and jerk 300 pounds when I'm
Sure.
30. But anyway, so we're gonna be doing different types of movements, different loads and stuff. But we're doing the same workout together. 3, 2, 1, go. We're going at the same time. We're talking smack between sets if we're resting or whatever. We're
Yeah.
all gathering around the whiteboard at the start before class to go over the workout to talk about announcements and things like that. And so all that sort of just inherently creates a community. The military and places like that obviously have it figured
Yeah.
out with the shared suffering aspect, and then team sports kind of have it figured out with the everybody doing the same program type
Right.
thing. And so CrossFit is sort of just like a little bit of the principles from those two areas, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, because to me that's the CrossFit secret sauce. To me, it seems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's no secret. Like,
Yeah.
again, I keep talking about Coach Glassman, but he would always talk about that the most important component of all this stuff is really the emotional component, because adherence and consistency is sort of the magic in fitness. I mean, put you on almost any program on earth and have you do it consistently, and
Yeah.
and you're gonna get fitter. That's better than doing
Right.
the literal greatest program on earth but not doing it
Right.
consistently, right?
Right.
So that emotional component and the EQ part of it is the single largest determining factor, I think, in why people keep coming back.
Yeah, and why it's grown and all that. And I think it's also, uh, I to me, I like it because our world is so like we're so isolated. Like
Mm-hmm.
specifically now in 2021, but like even before that, like like churches were diminishing, like all these kind of like institutions where people would get together
Right,
were just dying off.
right.
There used to be like men's clubs, like the Elks or something like that. Like I don't even know,
Yeah.
but it used to be a thing, and they used to name them after like
All sorts of various
animals.
animals. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's the
all like
moose, the
Western
elk, and
animal. Yeah, moose, elk.
there's
Sure,
another one
there's a
I'm forgetting.
uh, the
What?
Buffalo Knights of Columbus is the Catholic one.
Yeah, there's the Lions Club. That's a thing,
Oh
right?
yeah, the Lions. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's
So
all any animal. There's probably a club out there for.
there's probably a club for every animal out there. Yeah, but like those all died off for various
Right.
reasons, like the animal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think CrossFit, like it's kind of giving people that outlet for some people. I mean, for some people it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't jive for them, but I think that's part of
Right.
CrossFit's appeal is that it provides that community for.
Right.
Uh,
So
mhm.
weirdly enough, a couple of years with CrossFit HQ, I had the pleasure of getting to go to Harvard a few times with kind of Coach Glassman and the entourage, and we always got invited to two different schools to he would speak, not me.
Mhm.
It was Harvard Business School,
Okay,
pretty obvious, fastest growing like franchise in human history,
sure. A lot of business stuff there. Yeah.
and Harvard Divinity School, where they
Ah,
would
that's
talk about
interesting.
CrossFit as church or
Yeah.
something like that. And I mean, we talked earlier about like the people who get too crazy
Right. I even
evangelical
use the
about it,
word
which I'm not
evangelization. Like they evangelize
right,
for it. Yeah.
which I'm not a big fan of. But the kind of the center of this project that they were working on was the idea that there are these 5 characteristics of communities like that. And it's been years, so I honestly don't remember the
Sure.
characteristics, but there are these common things that you see in churches and these places where people gather and like provides a community, a sense of meaning, purpose, and significance. Uh, they work on outside projects and pursue common goals together, whatever it is. They were basically saying that you were seeing as church membership and things were declining, which I'm not saying it's a replacement for church. It's quite the opposite. It makes me sad.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, it is a replacement for community potentially.
right. Or
Yeah.
I would say a supplement. It
There you
should
go.
be a
That's a better
supplement
word.
anyway.
Supplement's a better word. You're right.
But unfortunately, I think for a lot of people, it is a replacement, and you know that is what it is. But we're working on trying to change that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At least a few
Slowly
of us out there.
trying. Okay. So cool. So that's kind of CrossFit overall. Let's dig into like you own a CrossFit gym now.
Mhm.
You're a recent owner of a CrossFit gym. What before we get into like the details of it, what made you want to take that switch from kind of being corporate, still corporate, rocking the kill cliff,
Yeah, not a
but
sponsor. Yeah,
not yet. Yeah.
they offered
Uh,
me a job a couple of years ago, but
did
I wouldn't
they?
take a sponsorship. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was offered a position as their director of branding and marketing,
Ooh.
and ended up turning it down because I'd moved across the country twice in less than a year, and they wanted me to move to Atlanta, which wasn't a condition when I applied for the job, and then it was when they offered it. So I
They
passed. But
companies do that.
fantastic guys, and love the product.
There we
Mission
go. Yeah. Wow. Great pitch. Nailed it. You'd make a good spokesperson for
Call
Killcliff.
me John. Call me.
Yeah. Okay. But what made you want to make the switch from being a corporate guy to a small business owner?
Mostly getting laid off, I would think.
Well, yeah, that would do it. Yeah. All right. Well, that answers
So
that question.
so let's dive into that a little bit more because there's a lot going on.
Sure.
CrossFit was so this goes back to what we were talking about at the start, kind of bringing things full circle. It's a little early for that. We still got a long way to go.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but so CrossFit was not the traditional corporate environment.
Okay.
Coach
Oh, right. This
Glassman
happened. Yes.
was a self-proclaimed and proud iconoclast and
Hmm.
libertarian,
Right.
and was famous for offending people. And in the end, actually, that's what did him in. He
Right.
had to resign and sell the company last year.
Yeah, I do remember he had a scandal of some kind that I don't really
Yeah,
remember.
he basically said, I'm going to get the exact words wrong, his words, not mine, that George Floyd was a drug addict and, robber, and no reasonable person should be mourning his loss or something like
Yeah,
that.
that'll get you. That
Which he said that
yeah.
in a public Zoom meeting like this with a bunch of affiliate owners
Oh
from
yeah.
around the world on it and recorded. And yeah. So anyway, that's what did him in. But before that, he did a lot of things that also pissed people off that he got away with. So anyway, working in the office, like there's weights and muscle up rings around the desks, and Biggie Smalls is blaring over the speakers, and we got to do jujitsu for an hour and a half over our lunch break, and all kinds of stuff. And with that sort of like iconoclast attitude,
Hmm.
I had more freedom than I did in a traditional corporate environment
Sure.
to practice my beliefs and think what I thought, right?
Yeah.
They always, whenever I was traveling with the group, they would always joke that I was like the Mormon of the group, even though I'm
Right.
not Mormon,
You're
because
Catholic, damn
I
it.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink coffee. So those are not particularly Catholic characteristics,
Yeah,
but
I'm shocked you don't.
uh,
I knew alcohol. I didn't know you didn't drink coffee either.
yeah, just never got into it.
That's
Didn't
fair.
want to be dependent upon something, and
Honestly,
just never got
once
into it.
yeah, I get
But
it.
anyway, so all those things combined with kind of like my, turning in for the night when they go to the bars too late or some different things and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That was the joke, but everybody accepted me. Coach Glassman was a atheist, but he would famously say the religious people who work for me are the best people and the best employees, and I will rabidly defend to your death or to my death your right to say, think, and believe anything it is that you want. So he was really cool about
Yeah.
that, at least most of the time. Toward the end, what started happening maybe 2 months before I left or was laid off, I should say, um, one of the guys I worked for, Russell Berger, this is different than Russ Green. They're both named Russell, which is really confusing.
Okay.
But he is a great man. Green Beret, or no, I'm sorry, Army Ranger, um, fairly militant atheist who later converted to Christianity, and he's actually a pastor now and has a Christian podcast called Defend and Confirm, and he's just like very outspoken and on fire for his faith. He tweeted supporting a CrossFit gym in Indianapolis that was in downtown Indianapolis, had a gay pride parade in the city that was going on, and this gym was owned by two Christians, and they just said we respect people's right to do whatever and not protest but like parade,
Yeah.
but we're not going to be participating. And they were crucified, like brigaded with thousands of 1-star reviews and paint thrown
Wow.
all over the gym and all that sort of stuff. And so Russell basically just tweeted that a privately owned business has the right to decide whether or not to participate in something, and
Yeah.
even if you disagree with it, you shouldn't give them 1-star reviews or whatever.
Yeah.
And within, I had just walked into Krav Maga for the night when that happened, and I
Hmm.
was called and told I had to get home and get on like damage control with the media and stuff. Because my
Right.
role evolved down the road, we kind of never got into that. By the end, I was doing more investigation of public health organizations and talking to the media and things like
Sure.
that.
Kind of like a PR role. Yeah.
Right. Somewhat.
Yeah.
So got home and started doing damage control, and Russell Berger, in my opinion, is probably like if there was like a CrossFit Mount Rushmore, not of the greatest athletes, but of the people that had done the most to advance the community and the methodology and things, Russell would probably be up there in my mind.
Okay.
And he had worked for the company for a decade, and in a matter of 8 hours, he was gone. He was suspended, and then he was fired. And
Wow.
so I called a good friend of mine who, I'll, well, so he's a priest. I'll just say
Okay.
that,
Sure.
who does CrossFit himself. And we talked a lot about it. And I was like, should I start looking for an exit strategy? And we kind of talked about it a lot, and whether this was the hill to die on and all those sorts of things. And thankfully, before that happened, the decision was made for me, and a new CEO was hired. Glassman was chairman of the board, but it was no longer CEO. It went in a different direction. They laid off 70% of the entire company, including my entire department, pretty much. So, like I said, the decision
Yeah.
was made for me, and was kind of a blessing in disguise, because if I quit over the stuff with Russell, I would have gotten severance and all those kind of things.
Right.
So it worked out. But yeah, I from the time I started working with CrossFit HQ, I always said I'd love to maintain a relationship with them, but I've always wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and
Right.
someday I'd probably like to consult or write articles for them, but own my own gym.
Hmm.
So I was kind of always looking this direction, but I got the kick in the pants that I needed, to set out down that path.
Okay. So that kick in the pants will do it. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting laid off really forces you to make decisions. What?
Mm-hmm.
So you ended up buying a gym instead of
Mm-hmm.
making your own. Was why that route? Why buying a business? Because I think a lot of people, when they think entrepreneur, they think start from the ground up, just start from nothing and build it, when honestly people do
Mm-hmm.
sell businesses rather frequently. Like it is a
Yeah.
thing.
Oh
So
yeah.
what made you go that route
Mm-hmm.
instead of making it, making your own, kind of start from
Mm-hmm.
scratch?
Well, I got to interact with hundreds of CrossFit affiliates around the country and around the world. I got to do some really cool traveling
Yeah.
while I was working for CrossFit headquarters. Um, and got to talk to them all the time about legislation and policy issues and things like that. And I think I just had a good sense of where the business was at in terms of like market saturation,
Hmm.
where or I say the business, but where like the CrossFit ecosystem was at in terms of how many gyms
Sure.
were out there already. And then frankly, like what it takes to build that from the ground up. I think I've got a lot of strengths, that I brought to the business. That was one of the reasons why the previous owners were interested in selling only to me.
Hmm.
But it's hard work. I mean, I've
Oh yeah.
unbelievable amount of respect for the people who start their own gym like that, and they're the only person, because
Right.
they're doing all of the back office business stuff. Maybe not as much of it as you're doing for a larger gym, but all the back office business stuff. And they're getting there at 5:45 a.m. or whatever it is for the first class, and maybe they get a break to go home in the middle of the day and stuff. But the last class is usually at like 6 or 7 p.m. at most gyms.
Hmm.
It's long, long days, and
Do most
you
gym
know
owners also coach the classes? Like, is that the common setup?
when you start out, yeah, you're coaching and you're
Okay.
doing everything usually. If you're just getting the gym off the ground, starting from scratch. And I've got a real passion for it, particularly for nutrition coaching
Okay.
and that sort of thing. But I also like my faith and my family that I'm working on building. I got my fiance now, and I've kind of didn't want to be an astronaut or this or that growing up. I always just wanted to be a good husband and father.
Sure.
My parents are divorced, and that was kind of like a not so great situation. And so they instilled in me kind of like make sure you do it right. So that was kind of always my main desire. And I just realized that starting your own gym like that, I wasn't going to have as much time to devote to the things that were even more important to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you just might as well go somewhere that's already kind of built up that,
Right.
right, the built up,
Because
yeah. Like
so
what part of the grind is, like you just didn't want to go through, like kind of, like what was like really that like pro con list like for you?
I mean, I never even really considered opening
Okay.
my own, at least after, while I was still working for HQ years before, I thought maybe I'll open my own someday. But
Yeah.
after that, it always became, I'm going to buy one that's running well because the previous owners of my gym, so like to get into the specific example here, they did an absolutely fantastic job building the community that we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
building out the core offering, which is group fitness classes,
Mm-hmm.
and delivering like an excellent product there. I really enjoy CrossFit, but what my strengths were that I kind of brought to it uniquely were the previous owners were in their 50s, didn't really understand technology. They were
Right.
spending 6 hours a month running credit cards. They were doing the schedule for coaches on Excel. They were, and they knew this. They knew they weren't, doing personal training. They weren't doing nutrition coaching. They weren't doing the store. I had been doing nutrition coaching and coaching at a CrossFit gym for a long time before this. I
Mm-hmm.
coached at a CrossFit gym on and off since 2013. I did been doing nutrition coaching for the previous 2 years. Um, and they were like, look, we feel like, we're getting older and we want to focus on growing that Legends program I mentioned earlier for
Okay.
seniors. And we know that we're not, doing everything we could with the store, with personal training, with nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
and with kind of running this back office efficiently, pursuing corporate partnerships, things like that. And we feel like we kind of need new blood to come in. And I genuinely feel like my personality and strengths were better suited to that than being the guy building the community from the ground up.
That makes sense. I feel like you've always been annoyingly high competent at whatever you do, or like you're just a high competent individual. And I say annoying because it's like you're the
Weirdly
type of guy
enough,
that just like does things well relatively quickly. Either you put in a bunch of hard work without showing
mhm.
it, which is probably what you do,
it's
but it was always one of those things where it's like, why is he good at this?
well,
Why is he randomly good at this?
it's honestly not because that's one of the reasons. Getting back to why fitness appealed to me is like so many things, like academically, intellectually, whatever. I feel like come fairly effortlessly,
Okay,
and so I've never been a good athlete, like in any team sports or fitness or anything. Like I'm not genetically gifted or anything like that, and so I think doing a bunch of physical fitness stuff appealed to me because I needed to be challenged in some area of my
sure,
life, and I'm just not naturally good at this stuff. And you learn so many things by challenging yourself. I'm sure any guest you have on here and all different topics you delve into, like adversity and
sure,
nothing good coming from being comfortable and easy and that sort of thing. Um, Coach Glassman would always say most of life's lessons are, or many of life's lessons are most easily learned in the physical province. You
interesting,
can learn a lot of stuff about yourself and about life, lifting weights and doing physical things that don't necessarily seem like they have a connection, right?
sure,
Um, and so, as far as the competence and stuff, like the physical has always been really challenging. And so, but having said that, running a business is hard. I've been telling people that like I think I graduated in the top 15 of my class at Hillsdale.
yeah,
Didn't try. I took pretty easy classes, so that's fair. But didn't try. Studied very little. Played a lot of video games. Goofed off with fraternity brothers a lot. And I feel like if I had to rate the difficulty of doing that at Hillsdale, graduating with I think I had a 3.84, I would rate it as like a two to 2.5 out of 10 difficulty,
okay.
which I'm sure would piss off a lot of
See,
people
that's what I'm
from
saying. That
Hillsdale.
would absolutely piss off a lot of people.
Whereas running
Finishing
this,
top 15 at Hillsdale and rating it at 2.5 out of 10 would drive people crazy. someone like me who like I was on academic probation my freshman year. I was like, but whatever.
Whereas running this business, I would say, has been about an 8 out of 10 the first 2 or 3 months. It's starting to get a little better, thankfully.
Sure. I
But
mean, that makes sense. Yeah,
it's been the hardest non-physical thing probably I've ever done in my life.
what's hard about it? Let's break it. Well, let's quick like when you bought the business, did you go through like the whole like get a loan, that whole situation,
Yep,
and
through the
like
Small Business Administration, and that
okay,
was a process. We
so
originally started talking about the sale in January of 2020.
okay, wow, so it
We
took
were
10 months or so.
Yeah, which isn't typical, but 2020 was not a typical year, right?
So, but by typical you mean it's normally faster.
Yes, much
Okay,
faster. We
okay.
were under contract set to close April 30th
Oh wow,
when the bank pulled the financing because gyms were closed because of coronavirus and they weren't
that's
going
fair. I mean,
to finance the
there's
purchase of a business that wasn't operating.
I understand that. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, by the time gyms opened back up and the SBA finished with PPP loans
Mm-hmm.
back, the previous iteration of them, and we're ready to start looking at loans for new business acquisitions and all that.
Right.
We didn't end up getting it done until October 23rd.
Okay. So like what are there any like restrictions they put on you or any sort of like criteria? Because I would think that because it's as someone who I'm have an independent streak to me, and the idea of like I like you have no desire to like build a business from the ground up. It sounds awful and terrible and like just like grindy and not that fun. But man, like running a business would be good.
Yeah.
Or like owning a franchise. Like I maintain that if I didn't have a Twitter account, I would get into like owning Dunkin' Donuts because I think they're a genius company. I love Dunkin' Donuts. I think I would own one if I could. But that's easier than just like it's better than John's Donuts. Like it's gonna be easier to start Dunkin' Donuts than John's Donuts.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I
like
feel like if you're going to go down that route, like do it before you're, in a serious relationship, engaged, married, have kids, whatever, for sure. Because
sure,
it's going to be a grind.
right? Oh, obviously. But like, how do they like? Does the bank or does anybody kind of come in and like shepherd you through it? Like, how do they know you're not just going to drive the business into the ground and then you're screwed?
Oh, I mean, months of due diligence and
Hmm.
cash flow projections, and like I had to pay an outside company $2,500 to do a 70-page business analysis and evaluation,
Okay.
to make sure that uh, this company, this third-party valuation company,
Hmm.
believed that CrossFit Rebels was worth what I was, asking for this loan.
Uh-huh.
It could be justified, all sorts of stuff like that. That's really what ends up taking a couple months,
Sure. And I'm sure it's
is the
overpriced
bank's due
as always.
diligence.
Yeah.
Yes, that was tremendously overpriced, that
Yes.
valuation.
But that's
In
just how it
fact,
can be.
they originally the valuation came back as about half of what I expected it to be.
Okay.
And it turned out that they did this 70-page report that I paid $2,500 for, and didn't bother to scroll down 2 more pages on the previous owner's tax returns and realized that they were a married couple filing jointly, so they accidentally left out half of the entire business.
Nice. Great. Brought to you by Killcliff. Buy
Yeah,
their sodas and
don't buy GCF valuations, the
there we go.
valuations of your business.
But banks probably require those as well.
Yeah, go with a different company if you're able to.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so are there any other like because that to me is really interesting, but it's also something you
Mm-hmm.
never hear about. Are there like
Mm-hmm.
was there anything about that process that surprised you? Like getting the evaluation, that's something I wouldn't expect, but makes sense. You like
Mm-hmm.
the bank is taking on risk by giving you the money, so they want something to kind of cover that.
Right.
But is there anything else where it's like negotiation was tricky? Are you now the 100% stakeholder? You said they're kind of
I am.
involved with some other stuff. Like, is there
Yeah.
like
So the way we structured that, and I'll get back to the surprise, although I'll have to think about it,
sure? I mean,
was
there's no surprises. There's no surprises, but it is I think it's a common part of business that you just like it's hidden for whatever reason. Like businesses trade hands all the time,
mhm.
but like it's only a certain type of person engages in that. Like I don't
Right.
know, like you're the only one I know that does that personally, even though I know it happens all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like the process was about what I expected it to be, but with like the whole Hillsdale econ education, I expected getting a government loan through a bureaucracy to be a fairly like tedious process. That valuation and all the projections and my business plan and things, like I kind of knew I was going to have to do all of that going in.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was a little bit surprised by just how unreliable people were and how long it took to
Sure.
get people to reply to you. But that you experience that in any area of work pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, the first week of the transition was really hectic, uh, just because I was transitioning us to a new payment processor
Sure.
because I didn't want to run credit cards for 6 hours a month.
Sure.
Like the previous owners who, again, like God bless them, they always worked so hard. It's just,
So
uh,
by running credit cards, you mean like with the machine, like going through, like punching in the numbers?
no, because they didn't have everyone's credit card like physically like that. But I think first of the month's coming around, they're billing for March dues, right?
Sure.
And they had like everybody's card number, written down or something, and would process through virtual merchant or like something insane like that. I don't even
Yeah.
know. But they were so the previous owners, husband and wife. The husband was a doctor of physical therapy by trade, and if we get into it more, that's one of the reasons I really like this business. This specific CrossFit gym is it was just run really well because as far as that stuff, the owner had an incredible understanding of anatomy and physiology
Okay.
and scaling workouts and things like that, and that's why they were able to build a much more diverse age range than most CrossFit gyms.
Okay.
And then his wife had worked in various fields, but they had run this business for the last 10 years, but they were in their 50s and kind of didn't understand tech, and they were working harder, not smarter, on a lot of different things.
Right.
And so that first week, trying to transition to like the new payment processor, because what I wanted to avoid was doing everything their way the first month just out of desperation,
Right.
and then
Get
getting caught
stuck.
up in
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh
So
yeah.
that first week with that stuff, because we had to be able to pay our bills and things,
Yeah.
and take payment on the first of the month, and then really the first month or two, the transition was really crazy, which I expected it to be. Um, I didn't expect to doubt myself, I
I was
think, as
about,
much as I have.
so that was gonna be my next question is like, were you nervous?
I was not nervous particularly going into it. Yeah, I was never really nervous, but I do frequently, um, have moments where I'm like, oh shoot, like what am I doing? Is this going to be okay? And then
Yeah.
something else happens, like okay, yeah, everything's going to be fine. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. We're going to get through it. But yeah, it definitely. I don't know. I never experienced this with schoolwork or anything. I don't know if you did, but I'll just like lay in bed, and think about things. I'm like, oh, I want to get this done. Oh, I want to get this done. Not even necessarily things I'm worried about. It's just like talking to other small business owners. So there's this guy who's a member of our gym
Hmm.
who owns a business next door that's a company that manufactures ice machines and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And we talk about like what it's like as a small business owner every now and then. And he said something like it's always on 24/7. You're
I was just about to
always
say
thinking
like,
about it. You take it home with you. It's
yeah,
never.
you don't have a shift. Like,
Yeah, there's not a 9 to 5
yeah,
and then you go home and you're like,
you can't punch
okay, now
out.
I'm doing X. It's just,
Right.
yeah, which blessing and curse, right? One of the reasons why I chose this is because I want to, be able to coach my kids' sports teams. It's really
Right.
important to me. I want to be there when they take their first steps. I want to have the freedom to be able to do some of my work remotely and work from home, sometimes, and be there for my family and,
Hmm.
have time for just the things that are the most important things in life,
Right.
right? But the downside of that, of course, also is that yeah, your schedule is flexible, but it's also always on.
Right. So, and that's led to, is it even doubt or is it just stress?
It's like moments of doubt. It doesn't linger, and they've become less frequent as time
Sure.
has gone on. But yeah, at times, especially in the early days of life, shoot, did I make a mistake? Should I have just gotten
Right.
a 9 to 5 job, because it would have been a lot less stressful and, easy.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it all relies on you, and your decisions will have like
yeah,
real
that's
impact. Like when you have a job and you screw up, it's like, well, whatever. Like my paycheck
right.
still shows up. Like I don't,
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing that I've kind of been thinking about a lot and it's given me insight into because there's been a couple like key decisions that I've had to make like lately in the last few weeks and
can you go into them? Like, can you talk about it?
just
Like walk us
like
through it.
high I don't want to get too into it, but just like different promotions and hirings and things
Sure.
like that.
Okay.
And like so one particular employee uh left in a huff with a lot of bad blood um the week before I took over, not realizing that it was going to change hands.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of drama around that. And yeah, I don't want to get too far into it, but
Right.
basically
And,
what
and
I've what
we
I've
don't need to talk bad about anybody. That's fine.
what I've realized is whether it's small business or political leaders or whatever, I feel like I've gotten some insight into and become way more convinced that any important decision like you're not going to be certain on, and like when someone's selling a decision is because like they've decided and then they've sold themselves on it and now they're just like convincing themselves and everyone else
Sure.
like
I think that's a very
um
common thing. Uh,
yeah.
I've read that. So I've been on a kick of like propagandists from the early 1900s, Bernays, and now
Hmm.
I'm reading Saul Alinsky, although he's not really a propagandist. Anyways, they all talk
Hmm.
about this that like people believe things first and they justify it afterwards. They're like, just
Yeah.
it's like throw the brainworms at them. They'll figure out why they believe it after after they've believed it in their gut. So
Hmm.
I think that's a just I don't know. I think few people actually decide what they choose. They just kind of get beliefs and
Hmm.
then they after the fact decide.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think, I've heard before that when you're making like a decision about your life, if you feel more peace about one decision or something like that. But
Yeah.
when I'm in the context of like talking to other people, in a meeting or something, and there's people looking at me and it's time to make a decision, you don't really have time to like feel that peace. You can always kind of like put it off and say like, okay, we're gonna circle back to this and
Mhm.
do more research or whatever it's going to be. But I've found that I have less time to like feel that in the business than I did in my personal life in terms of just like sit down and see what you're at peace about. It's more just like, all right, you know you got to make the call, and if it turns out well, great. If
Yeah.
it turns out poor, if it turns out well, great. Everybody's going to be happy and you won't hear a word. If it turns out poorly,
Yeah.
it's on you and you're going to hear about it.
That's true. Yeah, you're not going to get well, I don't know if anybody really gets this in their job, but like the attaboy or the good job,
Right.
like no one's going to
Yeah.
compliment you for running the business well. I mean, I
I
guess
will
you get
say,
profit, I guess, but that's
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I had a conversation with the old owner, who, like I said, is still around because they're running the Legends program. They retained ownership of that, and they just pay me a percentage
Okay.
because that was what they were interested in, and they're growing it outside of just our gym and offering seminars to teach other gyms, and
Oh,
hopefully
that's
we'll get approved by CrossFit HQ as a specialty seminar. So that would be huge for them, for me, and for hopefully like seniors who really need it to try to maintain a level of independence rather than
oh
end
yeah.
up with a really low quality of life in a nursing home or something.
Yeah.
um but I was talking with him last week and he was talking about how like that's the only pat on the back you're ever gonna get. You gotta just accept that like the money, when anything's wrong you're gonna hear complaints constantly, and it's just the nature of life. I would say you're right about it. Like you That's kind of how people are in their jobs to some extent. Like
Yeah.
you tend to hear about your mistakes more, but I would say it's magnified many fold as a small business owner
Oh yeah.
compared to like working in a corporate position. Like at
No, yeah.
least my experience.
Yeah, the buck stops with you. All right. You're the one with the power. You're the one that can do something about it. Like obviously you're gonna hear it more. It's gonna be normal job times 10 because you're the guy.
Mm.
But isn't that the fun part though?
Yeah, I mean the fun part is like when something actually works out, or people were unsure about a change or something, and then
Yeah.
like a little while later you look and can just kind of like smile to yourself and like, wait, people are actually happy about that.
Yeah.
People just don't like change,
Right.
you know.
Okay. Cool. What can you give me an example? Like what's the victory? I'll give you praise. Tell me how you nailed it, buddy. Come on. How'd you do it?
um
Because you're a
Man,
great owner. You're amazing. You crushed it. You're bringing in the bucks. Everyone's happy. You're getting people fit. Amazing owner. What'd you do
yeah.
there?
So I would say one thing that I'm really excited about right now is we partnered with an outside company to uh, kind of launch our nutrition program with them overseeing it. They've kind of already done a lot of the business aspects of it, and it costs a lot of money and stuff like that. But it's already like working out really well, and people. Just today, actually, I did a nutrition consultation with one of the members who had done various nutrition challenges before, and at the end he was like holy cow, like this is really great, and like thank you so much, and like we're just getting started. And the other thing like that's more of a team context, I would say, is new t-shirts. They've got the old coaches shirts are just kind of like fairly simple blue shirts that say like CrossFit Rebels in a fairly generic font on them, and it says coach
Hmm.
on the back. And I got one of our members is a like national award winning graphic designer, so I had him
There you go.
design like a kind of more spruced up design, and we put it on like a cool Nike shirt with like the Nike logo on it, so it looks like we're like a semi
Yeah.
like legit group
Yeah.
of people, or sports team, or like anything else there. And at first people are like, oh, you're changing the shirts. It's like little trivial things like that, because ultimately we're not in like a life or death business, right? We're running the gym
Yeah, but
and
no,
that
that
kind of stuff.
those
But
all those are all signals to people. Like
yeah,
it automatically signals more authority, more uh I don't even know. Like it looks like you have a corporate sponsor. Like it gives you that social proof more than like
right.
because anybody can print up a shirt.
Yeah.
But the fact that you'd print up a nice shirt signals more, right?
Right. And so people were just like, oh, why are you changing the coach shirts? Are you changing the logo? Blah, 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 blah. But now I see like people are excited about
Yeah.
it. It
Have
just,
you faced like skepticism from people? Like you're the new guy. Like are people like we'll see what 6 months till he screws everything up, like has anyone come up to you with that? Have you dealt with that at all?
Not so much.
Okay, good.
Definitely nothing negative like that. I would say that well, here's this kind of ties into things that have surprised me. The A lot of the challenges of the job, for me at least, have not been managing members or the member experience. Like I kind of changed very little about the core experience because it was already a successful business. And
Right.
like I said, I'm more like added nutrition, pursuing corporate partnerships,
Sure.
added a ton of new stuff to our store, updating the technology. Um, but so they've been really happy. If anything, the not skepticism, but like just the uncertainty and having to reassure and manage people and all that has actually come with working with other employees, and all my employees are great. They're really, I can genuinely say, all incredibly hardworking people who love that place in some ways more than I do, because they've been a part of it longer, right?
Sure.
I used to drop in there all the time when I was visiting my dad, because he's been a member for a long time, and that's how I originally got connected to the owners. They learned about my education, my background, and stuff, and that's why they ended up wanting to sell to me.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, my employees have been there longer than I have, which is kind of another interesting angle, right? Which I
Right.
guess is going to happen if you buy a business, but
Sure.
it's definitely something that you don't experience if you start your business from the ground up. You're like the
Yeah.
first guy there, whereas I'm like this person coming into their baby.
Yeah.
Um, and so just like reassuring them that you know I really value their knowledge, experience, and feedback, and that I have their best interests at heart. And then any changes that we do make, making sure to get out in front of them. And this is something that in some ways I went the hard way. It's like, you know, I own the business. I'm the sole owner 100%. So I can really do whatever I want.
Yeah, you
But
can.
in actuality, you need buy-in, and
Yeah.
I've had to get out in front of changes and talk to people and let them know ahead of time if we're going to do anything different at all. Just because people take that way better than, if I make a decision, even if
Right.
it's a really good decision, but
Right.
then they don't know about it until the decision has already been
Right. So like even though you are the dictator, you've got to couch it in like,
made. Yeah, more
what
of
do
a
you, what do you,
philosopher king, really.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, ruthless, ruthless dictator. You got to like, at the very least, pretend that other people are in on the decision, right? But like
I
also
mean,
like,
that's sort of like the cynical way
I
of
was about to
putting
say,
it,
like,
which is true
how can I put
sometimes, I
this
guess,
worse? Sometimes you have to torture people to make sure they go along with your plans. No, but like,
listen, I will fire you and you will starve to death and
yeah.
have no money.
Do you want to keep working here? Yeah. Burn your hand. Okay, yeah. So what that makes sense. That's an interesting like aspect of it because you would think, hey, I'm the business owner. I can do what I want. I'm gonna change the name. Like you could just go ruthless on it.
Right.
But there are other people like stakeholders, like the coaches there who have been there for whatever
Yeah.
5-10 years. They do love that business probably, and it is a
Yeah.
part of
And
them. Like they may not own it,
especially,
but it's a part of them.
yeah. And especially like even the members are stakeholders in a way, right? Because
True.
of the communal and emotional nature we've talked about.
Yeah.
So you gotta like have everybody on the same page.
Right.
Or not everybody on the same page, but there are a lot of stakeholders is a good way
Right.
to put it, like you
So
said.
it seems like you're probably working a lot on like communication skills.
Yeah, I've definitely had to figure a lot of that stuff out too because um we were talking about the fraternity thing earlier, and kind of the way I've been running things a little bit is so I was president of our fraternity after you graduated.
Hmm.
And the president was on the executive board, which was kind of like big picture stuff, right?
Right.
And then the vice president was in charge of the administrative board, and that was sort of like daily ops type stuff.
Right.
Not exactly in a fraternity, but in this business metaphor.
Sure.
And so I'm kind of like the president of the business, working on the big picture stuff, and then I have like an operations manager, people that are on the ground managing the daily ops, and figuring out how to communicate through all that and make sure that the VP position, so to speak, uh, knows and feels that they have the authority and all those sorts of things, that they're in on everything that's relevant to them and all that sort of stuff has definitely been important and something I'm continually learning.
Okay. Yeah. What um has your uh, like view of time changed? Because so this is something I think when I'm just an employee. I've never owned a company. So I like long term, I don't care that much. That's like I just my incentive isn't to care that much, right? Like I want
Mm-hmm.
my check to keep coming, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say you're like, are you planning things now for a year in advance, 6 months in advance?
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
when you probably worked for CrossFit Inc., were you even planning ahead? Like you were planning ahead to like next week for like the thing you had to do. Like is your time horizon
Yeah,
updated?
it
Are you
has
more of a long
definitely
term
gotten
thinker?
pushed further out. I'm trying to remember if there were things that I mean, there were some things I guess at CrossFit Inc. that I was still thinking long term about because we were, in a 7-year lawsuit,
Sure.
and we were, expanding into China and that untapped market. There were like some things there that were really interesting that were kind of like long term
Hmm.
projects. But yeah, you're absolutely right. As far as like, all right, time to work today, I was mostly thinking about like what I had to do that day, what I had to schedule tomorrow, what the weekly schedule was going to look like. Now I'm kind of doing that, but I'm also, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like thinking really long term. And this difference hadn't even really occurred to me fully until you just brought it up.
Okay.
But yeah, it's almost like I'm so long term now in my thinking that I need to continually come back to the short term to make sure that the people who are doing the daily short term stuff know that I am invested in paying attention to it.
Okay. And would you say that's better? Like, are you happier thinking long term, or is it kind of just nice to like zone out and be the employee and not have to really worry about it?
I mean, I honestly would say there's pros and cons to both.
Sure.
I definitely get a much greater sense of like purpose and significance with the longer term thinking and feeling like uh, what I'm doing actually matters.
Sure.
Um, whereas for most employees, like everything we're doing is important to some extent, but the company probably will continue on if like you did X, Y, Z or had to, at least
Right.
most of the time, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Generally.
so yeah, there's definitely more of a sense of purpose, and there's also this feeling of like unlimited like potential. Like it's whatever I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
Whereas I know for me and for many other people in that corporate position, it can be frustrating at times, feeling like you don't know what your path forward or upward or whatever is.
Right. Well, and even if you don't know what it is, you have no control over it really.
Right,
At best, you can apply, which is just you're begging, please promote me, right? Like
right.
that's what it comes down to. So that's gotta be fun. Like I would think that's a net
Yeah,
benefit, net
it's
positive.
cool.
Would you say better?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, um, I'm trying to like, I don't know. I'm much more invested in everything I'm doing. Time goes by a lot quicker.
That's a
Uh,
good sign. That's a good
yeah,
sign that you're in it, right? Flow state and all that jazz. But
and it's not like I hated working for CrossFit
that,
Inc. It's
yeah,
pretty cool.
I don't mean that as like an implication. It's just
No,
it's
I'm just saying
completely different.
I probably liked my CrossFit Inc. corporate job a lot better than a lot of people like their day jobs, and now I'm way more invested than I was in
Sure.
CrossFit Inc.
So overall, you think great choice to own the CrossFit gym.
Oh yeah,
Oh
for
yeah,
me for
easy. That
sure.
was an easy answer for you to make. Just
Yeah,
in case you ever like doubted yourself, know that you answered that question amazingly quickly. All right. So if you're
yeah,
so on your worst day where you're like, this blows, all of my employees suck, or memberships are down 5%. You answered
uh-huh.
that question quick. So just remember that. All right.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing to come back to.
Yeah. What what's your average day like? So like we kind of talked like big picture, what it's like to own it. What is like, let's get
Mhm.
nitty gritty with it. You're waking up probably 3 o'clock in the morning, like Jocko.
Yeah,
You
maybe 2:30.
2:30,
The
you're
first
Skyping with
workout.
Jocko, and you're gonna do a quick kettlebell workout. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. No,
So there's kind of like two general separate days that I have.
mm-hmm,
There's days that I'm here in Clearwater, where the business is.
right.
Um, and on these days, I tend to try to leave larger chunks of my schedule open
Okay.
um, because I have a lot of different things that I have to do when I'm here. I coach sometimes. I meet with nutrition clients. I meet with employees. But part of and perhaps the most important part of my job here is to build relationships with people. Because even though I'm not the daily guy on the ground every
Yeah.
single day, especially in a community like this where people are invested in things, people want to know the owner. They want to have a relationship with the owner. So I'm popping into classes, assistant
So,
coaching,
so like working
taking
with the
meetings, BS.
customer, like themselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
customers and employees,
Right.
both for
Okay.
sure.
I just want to clarify.
Um, whereas, when I'm remote, I'm more doing the also important work that keeps the business running, making sure that the licenses from the city and the state, these sorts of things are in order, doing the accounting or bookkeeping,
How much?
trying to grow the corporate partnerships and
Right.
a million other back office things like
How difficult was all that kind of like bookkeeping, accounting, payroll? You said there's licenses from the city. Like the fact that
that.
that didn't even cross my mind, but absolutely there would be issues with that.
That would have been very, very difficult, specifically the licensure and all that, if the previous owner hadn't guided me through that. And I'm
Oh,
extremely thankful that they did. But
okay.
yeah, so let's see, I've got a health studio license from the state of Florida. And then I've got a license from the city of Clearwater to operate a business here.
Sure.
Then I've got a sales and use tax
Sure.
certificate from the state of Florida and from the city, two separate things, because I sell protein powder and RX bars and a couple
Gotcha.
different things there that have to you have to collect sales tax on them, whereas
Right.
memberships you don't collect sales tax on a membership. And then obviously general liability insurance,
Sure.
workers compensation. Workers comp, I knew I needed liability insurance from my days of CrossFit. They make that pretty easy.
Yeah.
Because there's companies out there specifically designed or catering to CrossFit gyms for that now.
That makes sense.
Payroll was surprisingly easy. I had used ADP before as an employee, so I was
Okay.
already somewhat familiar with it. And the previous owners were using ADP when I took over, so I just stuck with that. Funny enough, ran payroll with ADP for the last time yesterday, and transitioning to a company called Frank Crum right now because one of our members, Matt Crum, his dad started and owns the company.
Those names
They're
overlap. I wonder if he's related to that company.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're a pretty big company actually, but they do like payroll, employee leasing, which kind of helps you limit liability. They do, benefits for small businesses so that even though you're really small, you can still potentially add healthcare, 401ks, dental,
Sure.
vision, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. And all that kind of stuff. So the companies out there like ADP and Frank Crum make it pretty easy actually. Like
Okay.
if you're, fairly young and like familiar with technology and figuring out, most like tech platforms like that are fairly intuitive nowadays.
Yeah.
And so that they did like a little training, but honestly, I kind of, zoned out through a chunk of it because it's so obvious a lot
Pretty
of what they're
intuitive.
doing. So yeah, payroll not bad. Workers comp is done through payroll with most companies now, so that was pretty easy. Um, but yeah, the licenses from the state, I would have been lost and probably would have like not even gotten everything that I needed if the previous owners hadn't helped lay all of that stuff out for me.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what I just got to ask the question: what time are you waking up in the morning? Like you're a small business owner. It's crack of dawn.
Honestly, no. I would
Sure.
say average is probably like 6:30 to 7:30 somewhere in there. So I mean, I got members working out starting at 6 a.m. So
Yeah.
if I'm coaching, in the morning, then I got to be at the gym by like 5:45. But I'm honestly, like I said, when I'm here, I'm not scheduling myself as the head coach super often because
Sure.
I want to be able to be available to meet with a member if they have a concern. I want to be available to meet with employees. I want to
Yeah.
so it's a balance between popping in usually as an assistant coach, so I'm on the floor with at
Right.
least every class once or twice to be there for people, but not the guy responsible for running the class
Yeah.
usually.
That's like the restaurant owner. Like he kind of goes around, says hi to everybody, occasionally brings out a plate, but
Yep.
yep.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good analogy.
yeah, and I always I like that. It shows that they care.
Yeah,
Like it's not just like whatever, it's spinning and doing its own thing. It's like, no, I'm here. I'm genuinely interested.
exactly. And that's honestly the main reason why I have to be here. Like,
Yeah.
you got to be there to meet with people and stuff, but most of it is for the exact reason you're talking about. I could probably be here less frequently outside of that. And like down the road, I probably will be, but in this initial period, I'm trying
No,
to
yeah.
be here.
Right now you're in that transition phase too. So you got to show people that you're not just uh heartless, like you actually care. And yeah,
Right.
that makes sense. So I have to imagine
So
that. Oh, sorry, go for it.
a lot of the time, I don't even necessarily have to be up that early. I just go to bed earlier now than I used to, and my dog will wake me up pretty early a lot of times. He
Yeah,
kind of gets excited.
that's good. I think that's a misnomer about like entrepreneurship, that you got to wake up early and you got to do that whole thing. Like you can make it work with your
Yeah.
schedule. So
Oh
that's why I
yeah.
asked you. Like I don't
So
like entrepreneurship is hard, but let's not like it's hard in a different
no,
way. It's not that kind of hard.
that's a thing that kind of irks me in American work culture, and particularly how it relates to fitness. Um, like yeah, you can get up earlier, but a couple things are going to happen. You either need to go to bed earlier, and then you're just chopping the top off of the totem pole and putting it at the bottom to try to make it taller. It doesn't really change anything.
Right.
There's something to be said for getting up and getting things done before your kids get up if you have kids or something like that. But
Sure.
in theory, you could also do that after they go to bed, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, But then there's also like this culture of bragging about like how early we get up and how little sleep we need,
Yeah.
which like you would never brag like I go through the McDonald's drive-through every single day,
Right.
so it's like why would you brag about poor sleep habits, which sleep is really important to all kinds of different things,
Sure.
when you wouldn't brag about poor nutrition habits or something like that. That's like getting, kind of uniquely related to fitness and stuff, but it's
No,
also
I think
true across all of American work culture.
that's fair. I always equate it. It's similar to like how people will like brag that they're bad at math. And it's like that'd be like bragging that you're bad at reading. Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah. So no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're on that same page where I'm like, because I'm a night owl. Like getting up early is just not a thing I
Mhm.
do well.
Yeah.
So I've always been like, yeah, I do things at night. I do things later. I like to work
Yep.
out at 8 o'clock at night. It's when I go.
Yeah. Exactly. Me too. And so when I'm getting up, at 6:30, a lot of times I honestly don't need to. Just my dog waking me up, and I'm kind of a light sleeper to where,
Sure.
once I'm up, I'd rather get up and do the things that I need to do, and then have more free time later, or heck, get everything done. Take a quick nap
Hmm.
over lunch, and then get back up.
Sure.
If it's I was up late that night and it's a crazy day or whatever, like definitely have that freedom. You mentioned Jocko earlier, like
Yeah.
discipline equals freedom. Like if you're disciplined enough to make yourself do the things that you need to do,
Yeah.
then you're going to have freedom to. It's
Sure.
when you put things off and don't do the stuff you're supposed to be doing that freedom
Right.
is going to evaporate, kind of, right?
Yeah. What I told my future brother-in-law this, like, if the bills are paid, feel free to play. Like, go for it. Like play your video games. If you got your stuff taken care of, you're done.
Yeah.
Like you did it.
Having said that, though, I have not touched my Xbox since taking over the business October 23rd, but hopefully soon,
Yeah, but like
before
this has got
too
to be
long.
more fun. Like I don't like any sort of
They
level
did
up.
lose their interest a little bit after a while.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Leveling up the business is gonna be way more fun than any sort of level up you can do in any video game.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Almost.
I want to wrap up soon, but can we let's talk like big picture.
Uh
What
huh.
like what general advice would you give to someone looking to buy a business? Like what is it? Is it not as scary as you thought? Is it scarier than you thought?
Hmm.
I think you make a good case for it being like an interesting and good like career path. And I think it's one that's great because you're not beholden to anybody. You're not like there's no
Hmm.
hills to die on like we talked on earlier. So you get that independence, you get that like you're the guy and it's fine. But like it's a unique career path and it's one that involves usually a giant loan. So
Hmm.
there is risk to it. So like what have you kind of learned? What would you say to somebody who's like looking into it, all that kind of stuff?
Um, it's both less scary than I thought and more scary at the same time. I know that doesn't really that's not a rational thing to say,
Yeah.
but you mentioned it. So like if I actually step back from it and like Spock or whatever for a minute and get hyper logical and look at how the business is operating day to day,
Yeah.
like the things that you worry about, like everything is going to be okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not more invested than I expected to be because I always was like really excited and emotionally invested.
Hmm.
But that emotional investment in the business, I feel it more than I expected to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not more scary, but I definitely I don't know. I've always been like fairly able to like take a step back and kind of separate myself from just like stoically let ups and downs happen. And I care a lot more, and I'm more feeling the emotional ups and downs than I expected to. I'll say. But to that person that's thinking about it, I would say make sure you know like the industry that the business you're looking at is in.
Okay.
I would say
That's true because you have what 10 years of experience before you bought the business, like or not maybe direct
yeah,
experience, but knowledge
basically
of it. Yeah.
I was already, yeah, I'd been doing CrossFit for 10 years. I'd worked for HQ for 5.
Right.
I had been in more CrossFit affiliates than probably 99.999% of people who do CrossFit even.
Right.
Had dealt with more owners, in a variety of different
Right.
geographic regions, and all
You
that kind
saw
of
what
stuff.
different people did too. Like you had that experience, that
Best
knowledge.
practices,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so I feel like it'd probably be a lot scarier if I just felt like, oh, I know business, but I didn't know
Right.
the business or industry specifically that I bought into.
So you're saying I should dig into like the donut industry before I just go out and buy a Dunkin'
Yeah,
Donut?
go eat like.
Okay.
It sounds
Yeah.
like you probably you say you love that place. So you've probably already been doing some good research.
I mean, I do. I just stare at the people. I'm just like, what are you guys doing? This is great. This is wonderful. This is a magical shop. Uh,
Of
but
magic.
have you been to a Dunkin'? It's so good.
Yeah.
And I love that it went with the brand change. It went from Dunkin' Donuts to just Dunkin'. Smart.
Yeah.
Genius move.
Yeah.
And now they're
I
everywhere.
like it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other advice you want to wrap up with? Anything else that kind of comes to mind? You're obviously in the throes of it right now. I mean, like 5
Yeah,
years
I
from now.
don't claim to know what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
but that's the exciting part is like we get to see you in it, right?
Yeah.
You haven't coasted yet. You're not like what's it called in the boat, like
No,
planes
definitely.
or whatever. It hops up.
Yeah. Yeah, get on a plane or
Yeah,
whatever you're talking about when a boat accelerates and
and then
gets
it
up out of
hops
the
on
water.
top, and then
And
that's
it's
when it hits speed.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's where we want to be.
Right. You're still in that like ramping up to like hop on top of the water area. So there's like
Right.
that's exciting though.
Yeah.
You'll miss this time period. 2 years from now, when you're coasting, you'll miss this.
Yeah. I'll probably have like a kid on the way, something
That's
by
also
then.
true.
So,
Yeah.
or if not already out and dealing with an infant. So that'll be a whole new, bubble
Right.
of
Well, I mean, life's always
excitement
going to throw
going.
something weird at you, but not even
Right.
the kids aren't even that weird. So it's pretty natural to have a kid. Yeah.
True.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm trying to think of like other advice to give, but honestly, I guess I just keep coming back to like, don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. Like it's all gonna be okay.
Sure.
Um, you know, unless you're in a life or death business where people are like,
Mhm.
actually, their lives depend on you, then it's not life or death.
Right.
And, it's like, especially with us, like we run a gym, people come in, it should be fun.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy is not very fun, but, even if you go bankrupt, it's not going to kill you. You should definitely do your due diligence
Right.
and try to avoid that
Right.
and stuff. But like the worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario is not going to kill you. So
Yeah.
if you're not hitting that worst case scenario, then you're okay. So
Yeah.
like it's all going to be good. So you might as well try to enjoy the process and not sweat it. Just put your head down and do what needs to be done rather than worrying about what you're not doing or what you could do or this or that. Just like do what you got to do and that's it.
Nice. All right. Well, that's a good place to end it. All right. Thank you, Derek, for taking your time to
Yeah,
come on here and
absolutely,
talk
man.
about CrossFit and your gym. Plug it out again. Maybe we have a viewer from Clearwater who'd want to go.
Yeah, CrossFit Rebels in Clearwater, Florida. You can find us basically anywhere you would expect to find a gym.
Yeah.
Um,
20% off if they mention the show. Is that?
you go 15.
There we go. There's gonna be one person. There we
That's
go.
our like standard discount for like military, law enforcement, whatever. So I can throw 15% discount.
All right.
This is real easy.
I would laugh so hard if somebody did that. I would be amazed.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll make an extra 15%.
I'll give you half of their first month as a referral fee.
There we go.
Because that's what we do usually if a member brings somebody else in.
There we go.
We'll give them half off their next.
All right. So everyone everyone, all of my Clearwater viewers, which I'm sure I have. Yeah, everyone move to Clearwater and sign up. So I can just be an affiliate or whatever. All right. Thank you, Derek. This is great. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks, John. It was fun.
All right. Take care.